UFC 311 Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan 2 is in jeopardy. It is supposed to go down on January 18th in Inglewood, California at the newly built Intuit Dome. But as you guys know, there are wildfires ravishing Los Angeles, California, dangerously close to where the UFC event is supposed to take place. Now, I will tell you right off the bat, we do not have official comment from the UFC on UFC 311, but the UFC sometimes leaves us out in the dark for quite a while before they ever give us any information. So I've scoured the internet. I found as much information as I could have on UFC 311 and the potential effect of the wildfires on the event, including a clip of a UFC employee discussing the wildfires and UFC 311, which we'll take a look at later in the video. Also, I found something that could be super alarming, but it could also mean nothing. But it's something that I want to show in this video as well. We'll get to that in a little bit as well. But let's start off with this, the headline. California wildfires live updates, 179,000 under evacuation orders. LA County Sheriff says some areas look like a bomb was dropped. This is truly tragic. I mean, this is a natural disaster. I know we're talking about MMA here. We're talking about a UFC event. Everyone's excited for UFC 311. There's a lot of people who are displaced. There's a lot of people who are, their homes have burned down. They're not only evacuated, but also they have lost their homes. Like, their homes are completely gone. And there's a lot of devastation going on in California, which I think, regardless if the fire moves exactly in the direction of the Intuit Dome, I think also some of those outside factors could lead to something changing with UFC 311. And we'll get to that in a second. But I'm sure you guys have seen some of these images. This is a neighborhood in California. This is a drone shot. I'm not going to play this video, but look at that. I mean, this is complete and utter devastation. I mean, that's insanity. And, I'm sure you guys have been following it, so I'm not going to cover it too much, but this is in Los Angeles. This is dangerously close to where the Intuit Arena is, which we're going to get to in a second when we start looking at some maps. So the first thing I did, I went to the UFC's website. Sometimes you can find these breadcrumbs. Okay, this points in one direction. I was the first person that actually found UFC 303 Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler was unavailable for purchase on ESPN+. And so I started kind of looking around the UFC's website and seeing if there was any clues on there. I went to UFC's website. I went to the UFC 311 event page, and it still says right here, Saturday, January 18th, 10 p.m. Eastern, Intuit Dome, Inglewood, United States. So on the UFC's website, if there is something being changed, if the event is being moved, which we'll get to some other events being moved here shortly, because there is a precedent for this. If the UFC does indeed potentially move the event or cancel the event, there is a precedent for this. But the next thing I went to was buy tickets. And if you go to Ticketmaster, you can still purchase tickets for the Intuit Dome for UFC 311. Because if I went here and all of a sudden there was no tickets available for purchase, that'd be a massive red flag that something was going on. Most of them are resale tickets, but right now, as it stands on Ticketmaster, it is late on January 9th. Actually, technically it's January 10th right now because it's past midnight. As of right now, you can still officially buy UFC 311 tickets for the Intuit Dome. Nothing has changed. The location has not changed on there. Now, the next thing I want to show you is kind of a map to kind of get a better understanding, because me personally, I wasn't super familiar with California, where the Intuit Dome is, where the wildfires are. So I want to show you guys, here are the wildfires, okay? Here's the major wildfire, the Palisade fire. There's other fires. There's a Sunset fire over here, and I think there's another one over here. Yeah, this is the Eaton fire that's up there. That one's not as, impactful to potentially the Intuit Dome. But if you look at this on the map here, the Intuit Dome is right down here. Here is the biggest threat to the potential event. Now, we're going to look at an actual smoke map here in a second, which I also could think could have an impact on the UFC's decision-making with the event. But in case you're wondering the distance here, because you can't always tell the distance if you're just looking at a map, this could be, 10,000 miles for all you know. I did put it in. I put in like the basically outermost edge of the fire-impacted area to the Intuit Dome. And as you see right here, it's roughly 27 minutes by car, 14.2 miles. So that's not particularly far. I mean, it's not like we're 50 miles away here. We're 14 miles, 27 minutes. That's not, a world's away. This fire depending on the winds and whatnot, and depending on how it's spread, could definitely spread 15 miles. I mean, look at the size of this area that is already burnt. And that doesn't even, count in the fact that you have wildfires all up here. You have the Kenneth fire up here. You have the Sunset fire up here. The Palisade fire is the one that is most kind of daunting when it comes to possibly being impactful for UFC 311. But I wanted to show you that. It's about 14 miles away. The next thing I want to show you. Los Angeles wildfires, Vikings-Rams wild card playoff game moved. Lakers game postponed as coaches, athletes are impacted by the fires. Now, the first thing I want to discuss here is the Lakers game postponed as coaches and athletes are impacted by the fires. So I think that's something to take into account. I don't want to say, oh, well, this is being moved, so definitely the UFC is going to be moved, because this is talking about the athletes and coaches who live in the area potentially affected by the fires. And you look at the UFC, most of the fighters can't afford to live in Los Angeles. They don't live anywhere near that area. I don't know that any of them live in that area, so I don't necessarily think it's going to affect any of the fighters who are potentially fighting at 311. But what I do find interesting is Los Angeles wildfire, Vikings-Rams wildcard playoff moved, because this playoff game, if you scroll down, NFL moves Rams-Vikings wildcard game to Arizona. The NFL playoffs kick off with a wildcard round this weekend, and the Los Angeles Rams are set to host the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night. So we're talking 3 days from now. It is only the 9th, or technically the 10th. It's past midnight. We're talking Monday, and they're worried about what impact that this fire can have on the game, so they're already preemptively moving it. You're looking at Monday now that they're canceling an event. I mean, the fights, that's even closer to the fights, which, are a little over a week away, about 8 days away now. And the Los Angeles game was supposed to take place at SoFi Stadium. Well, where is SoFi Stadium? SoFi Stadium, I have it marked on the map here. And if you scroll in, look where it's at. It's right next to the Intuit Dome. So in relation, in terms of distance, these two stadiums are not far away. And we're going to look at a smoke map in a second, which I think could also have an impact on the potential decision-making. What I'm trying to say when I talk about the decision-making for the UFC is I don't necessarily think, and I think a lot of people a lot of fans are thinking this way, basically the Intuit Dome has to be on fire or close to being on fire for the event to be canceled, moved, or postponed. I don't believe that's the case. I believe there are a multitude of factors that the UFC is going to look at and make their decision most likely relatively soon, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now, the other thing I want to show you is this is the Rams facility. I mean, look how daunting this looks. Now, this is supposedly in Woodland Hills, so a little bit different than Inglewood, California, but not that far off from my understanding. I don't know if it's on this map. Yeah, it's not necessarily on this map, but you get the point, okay? This is a video. I mean, look how you think the UFC, with all the chaos going on, and we're going to look at a smoke map and the air quality, you think the UFC is still going to want to hold an event when this, natural disaster is going on 15 minutes down the road or 24 minutes down the road? I don't know. Now, we're going to get to my particular opinion in a minute, but I want to get through all this stuff. Also, you have Rod Wave's LA concert, iHeartRadio Alter Ego canceled due to the wildfires. Now, this is actually at the Intuit Dome. You scroll down, Rod Wave's concert at Inglewood, California Intuit Dome was canceled Wednesday. So this was canceled on Wednesday. I don't know how much that truly means, considering Wednesday's a far cry from the following Saturday. I mean, you're looking at I guess you would be looking at the 8th, and now it's, we're talking about 10 days later, but it still is worth noting that the Intuit Dome had an event canceled, and it's because of the wildfires. And if you look at what Intuit Dome put out on their official Twitter regarding tonight's Rod Wave concert, Rod Wave concert at the Intuit Dome has been canceled due to the wildfires in Los Angeles. The health and safety of our fans and employees will remain the top priority. Tickets will be refunded at the original point of purchase. Now, this is also another thing. Could it be because the majority of their employees live in affected areas, so they want to cancel it? UFC, the majority of employees, I would assume, live in Las Vegas. So I don't know how big of an impact this has. But not only this has been canceled already, we also have a basketball game that was canceled. Tickets purchased for the original January 10th date will be valid for the new event on Saturday, February 1st, 2025. So a game at the Intuit Dome that was scheduled for January 10th, which would have been Friday, which technically it's already Friday, was now rescheduled for February 1st. So the one thing I took away from this is, imagine this was rescheduled for like the 20th or something. I'd be like, okay, well, maybe they're thinking they're going to have a grasp on it. They're on the ground. They're local. They understand what goes on there. They're going to know, they're going to have a better grasp on the situation. They're pushing it out till February 1st. So out till February 1st tells me they're not sure what's going on. So you have to take into account, if there's a lot of chaos going on, there's a lot of people displaced from their homes. On top of that, the air quality, smoke is everywhere. You're talking only a mere couple miles away. Currently, it's definitely spreading now in the direction it's spreading. We're going to take a look at a map here in a second. Could also affect this, but they're pushing this event out till February 1st right now. And who knows, maybe if this gets worse, which this is kind of unprecedented level of natural disaster, could get pushed out even further. Now, the next thing I want to take a look at, here is a map that shows the fire perimeter and also high fire hazard severity zone. The red is, obviously where the fire currently is. And I'm assuming the way I read this map is basically the yellow is kind of the direction that it's heading. And also, obviously could easily catch fire. And then also, because obviously I don't think there's not a fire right here in Inglewood, but this, I guess, has the conditions to be conducive for a fire. You hear that type of stuff all the time. Like, okay, the conditions for a tornado or this or that, may be met and it could happen. Imagine a fire kicks off right here. You can all but kiss UFC 311 gone, at least at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. The other thing I want to take a look at, we got a lot to check out. Okay. I'm trying to move fast through this. You have the smoke map. I mean, look at this smoke. I mean, this smoke is insane. And, you can't really necessarily see it through this smoke kind of, the way they show it on this map. But there's the fire. Again, you're talking, the Intuit Dome is not that far away. Obviously, I showed you this map. It's 14 miles away. It's 15 miles away. Why is it showing 15 miles here? I don't know why it's showing 15. It was showing 14 miles earlier. Maybe this is a different route. But anyway, you get the point. And look at all this smoke. The air quality is horrible right now in LA. Is the UFC going to want to hold an event there while all this is going on, considering the mass chaos? People, I mean, it's not like the end of the world, but there's a lot of people displaced from their homes. There's a lot of people that are frantic. There's smoke everywhere. Conditions for other fires could break out. There's emergency services on the ground trying to fight the fire. And meanwhile, it's only a couple miles down the road from the Intuit Dome where events already have been canceled. Now, one thing when I was searching around the internet, this could mean something. This could mean absolutely nothing. We're going to get to a clip of a UFC employee talking about it here in a second. But when I searched UFC 311, I got this screen. Now, this may not look anything alarming right now, but then I searched UFC 312. So I want you to take a good look at this screen, take a good look. And then I wanted you to take a look when I searched UFC 312. Venue. And it shows the Bank Arena here in Australia. For 311, you see there's nothing there for venue. Now, this is Google. This could literally mean nothing. You go over here. I don't know if you can really see it here on the screen, but under location right here, it says Intuit Dome City, Inglewood, California. But I just thought that was something to note, considering for 312, which is a garbage card. I mean, this is a horrific card. I don't want to get into that on this video, but horrific card. It has the venue listed. 312 or 311 does not have the venue listed. By the way, guys, if you enjoy these types of videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. I'm trying to get to 100K subscribers, at least 50K in 2025. It's insane that it's already 2025. Next thing I want to take a look at, media member Damon Martin, who works for MMA Fighting, he quoted the Los Angeles Rams saying, in the interest of public safety, Monday's wildcard game has been moved to Arizona. And then it's the image. He says, reached out to the UFC to ask if there's any plan in place for UFC 311 next week with the event taking place at the Intuit Dome, but nothing back yet. There are definitely things going on behind the scenes right now where the UFC and staff are trying to figure out what they're going to do. There's definitely a contingency plan right now for UFC 311, or they're getting it together right now. I'm going to give kind of my finalized opinion on this after we check out the clip that I found online. But the last thing I want to take a look at is a clip I found online. I'm going to link this podcast down below, but this is from Oddshark. This has 530 views right now. This was uploaded 10 hours ago, and it happens to be that Jon Anik was on there, and Jon Anik starts talking about the wildfires in Los Angeles in their relations to UFC 311. I think this is important to look at right now and kind of the wording that Jon Anik uses. Let's listen.
Yeah, a lot of depth, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't lead the conversation with everything that is going on in Los Angeles County and everybody who is dealing with mass devastation in that area, the Pacific Palisades.
By the way, these pictures are insane. These pictures are absolutely insane.
Is nothing of what we knew it to be, and so many people have been displaced, and thankfully there haven't been mass casualties in terms of lives lost, but memories and establishments and homes and everything that people knew being ripped away. So we shout out and acknowledge those people off the top. And
so in a second here, he's going to get to actually UFC 311 and has he heard if anything's going on with UFC 311, considering it's in Inglewood, California?
At least right now, I spoke with my boss yesterday. It appears as though UFC 311 will be all systems go for Inglewood, California, Intuit Dome. And yes, as I look at the main card, my man, we're loaded, right?
And then he starts talking about how good the card is. I'm going to play that back one more time. Let's actually rewind that a little bit. Listen to this one more time. The exact wording that Jon Anik uses.
And homes and everything that people knew being ripped away. So we shout out and acknowledge those people off the top. And at least right now, I spoke with...
At least right now, I'm going to give you my opinion here in a minute.
With my boss yesterday, it appears as though UFC 311 will be all systems go for Inglewood, California, Intuit Dome. And yes, as I look...
It appears as if all systems are go for UFC 311 in Inglewood, California. I mean, that's shaky to say the least, okay? That's shaky to say the least. I believe ultimately, if I had to guess right now, okay, I've laid out everything that I've showed you. I believe there is a litany of factors that will impact the UFC's decision of what they do with UFC 311. I will tell you this right now. I do not believe UFC 311 will be canceled. UFC 311 will take place on January 18th. It's just a matter of where. And if I had to guess right now, with the information we have right now, which again, I laid out every bit of information that I have, you now have, you can make an informed decision yourself. Let me know down in the comments what you think will happen. I believe ultimately UFC 311, unless something substantially changes in the next 48 hours, what I would bank on is UFC 311 being moved to another arena. Now, could it be Arizona like they moved the NFL game? I don't know. If I had to guess, it'll probably end up getting moved to Las Vegas. I don't know if the team, I should have looked up if the T-Mobile Arena was available on January 18th. I'll look that up after that, leave an updated comment. But if push comes to shove, I think potentially the UFC would move UFC 311 and host it in the Apex. Now, does that hurt them in terms of a gate? Yes, it does. If I had to guess personally right now, again, I think no matter what, the UFC will move it to another arena if they need to, or the Apex if necessary. If I had to guess, if I have to pin down a very specific prediction, I believe UFC 311 will be moved to another arena where they can still get a gate, where they can still offer the people who are coming to UFC 311 at the Intuit Dome, where they can offer them the ability to come there and they can still maintain their gate. I find it hard to believe they're going to do 311 at the Apex. And I know it sounds crazy considering we're basically a week away from UFC 311, but the last thing I want to highlight in this video is we have a precedent for this. UFC 232, I don't know why I was saying that wrong. UFC 232 moved from Las Vegas to LA after Jon Jones' test result. So in case you don't know this literally happened on a week's notice. In an unprecedented move, the UFC is relocating next weekend's UFC 232 pay-per-view event from Las Vegas to Los Angeles because of a licensing issue involving Jon Jones and the state of Nevada. So basically, you had a week's notice. They moved a mega pay-per-view, the end-of-year pay-per-view, because it doesn't matter the specifics, but essentially, Jon Jones had an adverse test result. Las Vegas wanted to do more research before they were willing to give him a license. The UFC had talked to California. California was willing to give him a license. So they said, okay, we'll just move the event to California. So the UFC, I mean, it's a well-oiled machine. Say what you will. I criticize the UFC all the time. It's a well-oiled machine. I think basically what will most likely happen, if I had to guess right now, again, I know I've said that a couple times, UFC will move UFC 311 to another open arena where they can still sell tickets. They'll probably announce it this weekend so they can still try to get as much of that live gate as possible unless something substantially changes. But you heard it from Jon Anik, at least right now, UFC 311 is staying at the Intuit Dome. But I mean, obviously things are subject to change. This is a natural disaster. A bunch of stuff could change between now and this weekend. And I do believe we'll have a decision by Monday. I mean, could they scramble within a couple days? Maybe they just set up a contingency plan. There's no doubt in my mind right now they have a contingency plan to potentially move the event around. They're probably putting out feelers right now for a potential T-Mobile Arena or some other arena to potentially host the event somewhere nearby. I'm not familiar with every arena in California. Maybe they move it somewhere else further away from the affected area, but I don't think necessarily the fires have to spread like unbelievably close or right on the Intuit Dome's lawn for the event to be moved around to a separate location, because you also have the chaos of people being displaced from their homes. You have the smoke factor. You have the fact that you have emergency services on the ground fighting the wildfires. So this is a very complex and nuanced situation, but I believe UFC 311 is in jeopardy. But ultimately, I believe UFC 311 will happen. It's just a matter of where it happens. Now, as soon as we get more news, I will make a video on it, giving you guys an update. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video.